Welcome to the second class of the Introduction to the Language of the Body. One whole module of the training course will be on the breath and building resiliency. And we're also going to learn a lot about the nervous system and how to regulate the nervous system, not only with the breath, but the breath will be a big part that we're going to look at. I am a great fan of breathing exercises and finding a way to breathe more normally with more ease, especially during times where we are being challenged on some level or another. So I just briefly want to talk about the why and what we're doing with the breath, or what we can do with the breath. And there's probably even more, but these are the things that I'm bringing into the breathing practices. I already mentioned one aspect for sure is the regulation of the nervous system with some breathing exercises, and most of you would have already experienced that or heard of that or even teach that in some way. So, on one hand, we can do some breathing exercises that are very calming, having that calming effect on the nervous system, bringing us more into relaxation. We are probably encouraging a slowing of the breath in that context. We are maybe also focusing on a little bit of vagal tone. But at the same time, we are also sending this message back to the brain. So when we are doing these breathing exercises, we are creating a sense of comfort and a sense of, we are okay. That is being transmitted back to the brain. I'm oversimplifying the science of that for the time being. But in this way, we have this feedback loop and can really help regulate the nervous system through our breathing exercises. And with that in mind, I would always invite a careful choosing of the type of practices that we do. As a whole, we're actually, in the first place, developing a little bit more awareness, breath awareness. We all know that there's so many people who literally don't even realize that they are breathing in the first place. So even encouraging that to develop some awareness of the breath in the first place is amazing. And there is a sort of next step to that, in that there is a real meditative quality to a lot of these breathing exercises as well. And we can use the breath as an anchor for a meditation practice, for a practice that just kind of promotes general awareness of what is in the present moment. So it's a really helpful tool in our meditation practice as well. Something I really like doing as part of my breathing practice is a little bit of preparation. Preparation maybe. And look at some of the tension that we are holding in all of the muscles that are involved in the breathing process. So that would be around the whole of the thorax and the neck. I mean, there's so many muscles involved in breathing, as well as tension that we are holding in the neck and the suboccipital area. So the tension that we're holding here in the neck can have quite an impact as well on our breathing capacity, as it might just pinch the vagus nerve that is also in charge of regulating the opening and closing of the bronchi and the respiration process. So with any kind of chronic conditions that we might have going on, like asthma or something like this, a good part of what we should be focusing on is making sure that the information actually flows and that we release some of that tension in the neck. So that would be one of my focuses. And of course, having a look at the diaphragm, our main breathing muscle. And the diaphragm is one of those muscles that holds a lot of our anxiety tension. In fact, there could be something structural going on or something else, but the diaphragm being stuck, in most cases, that is a result of anxiety building up and then literally creating that tension in the diaphragm. And so I love exercises that help with freeing that up in some way. So actually even just bringing some awareness into the diaphragm area and feeling it, and disturbing some of those holding patterns and those habits that we have in the diaphragm. And the exercise we're going to do today will be focusing on that. What else? Well, the diaphragm obviously is part of the whole diaphragmatic pressure system that we have going on in the body. So actually, when it comes to maybe a yoga practice, or well, even like in that preparation to our breathing practices, it can be quite helpful to also make sure that we're relaxing the pelvic floor, and we have another kind of diaphragm membrane running through the skull, that we're not holding too much tension there. And doing practices that help us free up the diaphragm will also help just regulating that whole of the pressure system. We're doing actually a whole module just on that during the training course. As a kind of little byproduct, but actually it's really great and it's quite effective, we are also encouraging the lymphatic system to work a little bit better, especially when we are working with that pressure system that I was just talking about and freeing up the diaphragm. We have a big lymph duct running right through the deep abdomen that's in charge of draining the legs, and even just all of that work that we're doing around the thorax. So definitely a stimulation of the lymphatic system, as well as actually the circulatory system. And another little byproduct, I really like to, I mean, you know, as that preparation, I tend to do a little bit of, I don't know, something from yoga, but also quite a lot from Qigong. And I like some patting and stimulating the meridians, the lung meridian in particular. I like, you know, to do quite a bit of this arm movement. And that is also related to, well, one, we can actually bring things back into the wholeness of the body. But on the other hand, all of this arm stuff is also related to our immune system. So we have a little bit of an immune system, system booster going on with those practices as well, if you're including those. So I'm quite a great fan of keeping breathing practices relatively simple, and they're great to include in your yoga class, or even having actual breathing sessions. I'm running breathing sessions like 3 times a week, and they're just 30 minutes. And in those 30 minutes, we'll be focusing probably half of that on preparation and also waking up the breath, and then the second half doing a different breathing exercise each time. And for sure I have like my favorite ones, and still I quite like to change it from time to time as well. And that's doable, it's accessible, so it's regular enough, it's 3 times a week, and it might just encourage people to also sit on the days between, but it is still also doable because it's a short practice. It doesn't take that much time out of somebody's day, so it's useful. And this is like really what I like about using breathing exercises. They are useful. I can really make them serve me in times where I need to really nurture my innate resiliency in my system. So normally I would probably do my breathing practice sitting up. I'm a great fan of sitting on a chair doing my breathing practices. In fact, I do that most of the time, and I encourage my students also. So it's really available and accessible to everyone. Like my mum joins, and she's already in her 70s. But it makes it easier to join, of course, if we don't have to sit in this yogic pose. But this particular exercise is also really great to do lying on the floor. So it's quite comfortable. It actually is a little bit easier because gravity is on our side to actually feel it. So this might be also something that we can quite nicely incorporate in a yoga class. So the exercises we're doing today is really about disturbing some of those holding patterns that we hold in the diaphragm. And remember, the tension that we hold in the diaphragm is usually comes from anxiety in some degree. And that can be not even an anxiety that we are all that aware of. It can just be those little stresses of life, and habits that have been building up over time. So anything that's become like a holding pattern of some form, we need to, on a regular basis, just kind of sort of shake it up a bit and go, hey, hang on, let's not get stuck here too much. And one of my teachers said, they need a good dusting on a regular basis. I quite like that expression. So that's what we're going to do here today. We're just going to disturb a little bit to what the diaphragm might be kind of used to with these different exercises we're going to do. So I have Martina here with me again today to do the practice. So she's lying comfortably with her knees bent. We could also place a bolster under her knees, or whatever support and cushioning your student might need. And feel free to join in. You can also just follow. So it depends on which perspective you're approaching from, whether you're a teacher or you're really interested in this for yourself. But even if you are a teacher, I'd still invite you to very much have a go at this and practice this so you can experience it in your own body and really understand it from within before you start sharing. So Martina seems comfortable enough here. And we'll start by just placing the hands on the abdomen and observing the natural movement of the breath here. So to begin with, you might notice as you inhale how keeping it comfortable and at ease, but a little bit more active, expanding the abdomen on the inhale and drawing it back on the exhale. Great. Let's do that one more round. We can take a little break. So if you feel like part of that needs to be relaxing the hands to the floor, then go ahead and do that. Or if they want to just stay resting on the belly, that's also good. Great. It depends a little bit on if there is something happening in the shoulders, if it's comfortable and available to take the hands to the side of the rib cage. And if that is a little bit challenging in the shoulder or shoulders, you can also place the hands a little bit more on top of the ribs for a moment, just so you can get a bit more sense there of the rib cage. And then you breathe again, maybe a little bit more deeply. And you can feel the expansion going wide out into the hands, and the hands coming back together towards the spine as you exhale. So the focus of the expansion is now higher up. In fact, we actually want to keep the belly empty, if possible. And just breathe up and wide into the hands, into the ribs. And as we exhale, really let that empty out and come back together towards your middle. And some people will find the first one a little bit easier. Some people will find the second one a little bit easier. We all have our kind of natural preferences. So just observe what that feels like for you. And even though you might find one trickier than the other, keep trying. So it just requires a bit more concentration in that case, and you keep practicing, you keep at it. Great, and we'll do one more of those. And then we take a little break. You know, relax your hands, breathe normally. And so a little teaching note on the side, you notice that we are only really doing a few rounds of each, and then we take a break. And that's really with the intention to make this very accessible. For some people, this will be really quite hard work already, because they're not a yoga teacher like Martina is or like you are. They are potentially not even aware that they're breathing in the first place. So this might be really quite a lot for them to process. It might even be a little bit triggering in some places. So we're keeping it short and sweet in a way. A few rounds, having a go, having a play, but then always taking a break. And so for the next one, It's a little bit more playful, a little bit more concentration required. One hand goes on the ribs and one hand goes on the belly. And you can find that rib hand somewhere comfortable. And then you inhale, expand into the belly. Exhale, draw the belly back. And then the next round, you inhale and expand into the ribs instead. So we're switching. And exhale, letting that empty out and come back towards the center. And next one goes into the abdomen again. So we alternate. One breath goes into the abdomen, expanding and coming back. And then the next one goes into the ribs, out and wide and coming back. And switching that might not be that easy. So again, we can just keep trying, having a little play with that. See how that goes. Especially if you're finding one generally a little bit easier than the other breath, it will be a little tricky. And see how that goes. Great. Let's do one more each. And then after this one, we take a break. Relax for a moment, take a few normal breaths here. And just observing how that feels on the body, what that is doing in the body, how the body is responding. And letting that integrate also in between the exercises. Great. So with the hands on the abdomen again, we're going to inhale and expand the abdomen and then hold the breath just for a second or two and expand the belly a little bit more whilst we're holding the breath, and then maybe a little bit more sharply exhale and draw the belly back in. Good. So it's an inhale, expanding the belly. Then we hold the breath, doesn't take very long, but whilst we hold the breath, expand the belly more, and then letting that empty out, drawing that in. And let's do a few more rounds of that. Great. So there's a real engagement happening here now of the abdominals. They're starting to help. We're really beginning to play a little bit with the pressure system in the body. You might feel that increase of pressure in this exercise, and then that releasing of the pressure. Good. Let's do one more of that. Wonderful. Great, thank you. And relax, take a break. Let that settle, let it become quiet. Great. And on the next one, we are inhaling, expanding the belly again. Exhaling, a little bit more contraction with the abdominal muscles to draw the belly in, but slowly and gently. And then as we've exhaled, at the end of the exhale, we hold the breath out for a moment. And whilst we do, again, just for a second or two, we try to relax the abdominal contraction. So we try to relax the abdominal muscles. So there's a little bit of concentration required on that. For that, what I think is quite helpful is having one hand on the belly and one hand on the ribs. Great. So I'll talk us through it again. Inhaling, expanding into the belly. Exhale, retracting the belly and using a little bit of muscular effort here to draw it back. Hold the breath out, and whilst you do, see if you can relax the abdominal muscles. And then you start again. If for this one, especially for this one, it might feel like you're getting a little bit short of breath at some point, then you just take an extra breath between the rounds. That's fine. You don't have to keep going. So if you feel like, okay, I just need to breathe for a moment, then always just take a normal breath. Great. So with this one hand is on the ribs, because as we relax the abdominal contraction, the abdominal muscles, you might even feel a little bit of a subtle flare out in the ribs in that moment of releasing the abdominals, maybe. So that hand on the ribs might just help feeling that, noticing that. Great. Let's make this the final one. Drawing the belly back, holding the breath out, and try and relax the abdominals. Good. And then relax. Take a break. Good. Breathing normally again for a few rounds. Good. And slowly roll into your comfortable side for a moment, letting the fluid settle. Taking 2, 3, 4, 5 breaths on your side. I really like giving people time here so the body can adjust to that shift, that change. And then slowly make your way up and come to sitting. So maybe that way, do you want to sit on a cushion? No. Okay. So all of these exercises we can also do sitting up already, of course. It's just lying down. Gravity actually helps there a little bit with the emptying out. And we'll do a very subtle version of Kapalabhati. So the way we're going to do this, it's a bit different. We're going to inhale and expand that abdomen. And then on the exhale, we're using tiny little contractions of the abdominal muscles to puff the air out in little kind of candy floss clouds, basically. So the difference is that we're not sucking the air back in between. We're not going all of that, but it's just a long inhale, deeply expanding the abdomen, and then just could be 5, could be 8, could be 10 little puffs to empty out completely, and then taking an inhale again. And those little puffs want to be super subtle, literally like, candy floss clouds, and they want to be slow. So easily a second or so between each puff. I'll actually do it with you, we can do it together. And it can be helpful to have a hand on the belly just to kind of feel this, but optional. And you can close your eyes or look away into the distance to the horizon, but I suggest definitely away from the screen. And then we take a deep breath into our lungs, filling the lungs, and an easy breath out. Tube again, and then we inhale, expand into the belly, and then little contractions. Until all of the air has gone out. And then we inhale again deeply, expanding into the belly. Little puffs. So keep going with that. Getting adjusted to the slightly different way of doing this exercise. And once you're finding your rhythm with it and the mechanics of it, see if you can begin to make this even more subtle. So as you puff the air out, it becomes really just like blowing off a little fluffy thing on the tip of the nose. It might almost become almost silent, more and more subtle. Almost like you want to do Kapalabhati secretly. Let's do another round of that. And then on this one, really empty out. Go as far out as you can. Maybe 1 or 2 extra puffs. And right at the very, very end, empty out those lungs. We take a deep, 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 deep breath in. Fill your lungs as much as you can. Hold your breath. Just for a comfortable period of time. It might be a couple of seconds, might be 20. As and when you feel ready, you very, very gently and quietly and softly release the breath again. But just hold the breath for as long as it feels good for you. And then that really soft, gentle release at some point. You can release the hand and relax for a moment, taking a break, taking a few easier normal breaths. Great. So if you feel like you would like to have a little move or stretch or change somehow in your position, go for it. And we'll do one more breathing exercise here. Also one of my favorite. And this one is, it's like we're saying who, like who is this? Only we're not going to vocalize the oo sound, we're just making the sound. We're making it kind of almost like by restricting a little bit the flow of air. So I'm pressing the back of the tongue up against the roof of the mouth. Like I want to make the sound of like a seashell or of wind or Darth Vader or I don't know, that kind of sound. But we are pretending that we're making the oo sound as well, only without the actual sound. So that means we're pursing the lips as we're doing it and kind of blowing the air out, almost like we're blowing out a candle maybe. So it's a little bit pushy as we exhale out through the mouth, but it's also constant. So as we're restricting the flow of air at the back of the mouth a little bit, it's sort of slowing it down and giving that exhale quite a constant level. So it's not kind of like a and then it's already out and gone. I'll demonstrate it. So we inhale through the nose and then inhaling through the nose each time, and we do a total of 10 rounds of that. So that's like 10 because it's easy to count. I can just press my fingers into my thighs and don't actually really have to count. So that helps. I can really keep with my focus on my breathing. Again, we can close the eyes or look away to the horizon, to the distance, whatever feels best for you. And we'll have a go. 10 rounds of this. So we start together. I'm going to give you a little indication when I'm coming to about my 8th round, just so that we have roughly indication. But if you are quicker than me, feel free to take an 11th breath or just take a break. Or if you're slower than me, also no problem at all. Take your time at the end to finish. So really find your own rhythm with this. We can start together. Inhaling through the nose. I'm coming to my 8th round. As and when you finish, relax, take a break, observe the breath, observe the natural movement of your diaphragm. What does it feel like to breathe now, normally, without any effort, without any manipulation? And we're going to do a second round of 10 here. So this time, obviously, the focus is naturally on that exhalation as we are really, blowing the air out, and there's all the action happening on the exhale. But what I would like us to do on the next 10 rounds is to also bring a little bit of awareness and concentration to the inhalation, and just observe what's actually happening on that inhale, and just taking a slightly more conscious inhalation just as much as that conscious, active, more active exhalation. So 10 more rounds, pretty much exactly the same, but just bringing a bit more focus also on that inhalation as we're going along. Again, 10 rounds, we can count on our fingers. We can start together. Inhaling through the nose. Coming to my 8th round. So when you finish, take a break, relax, and observe. How does your breath feel now? Observe the natural movement of the diaphragm. And also take a moment and check in with how you're holding yourself in your body in the seated position you chose for this practice. Does that feel different in any way? So with this exercise, we could even do a 3rd round of 10, but 2 is a good number. And, you know, after having done it a few times, you could go up to doing a 3rd round of 10. And on the 3rd round of 10, I would maybe imagine really inhaling and exhaling and making this come from my entire body. It's like my whole body is my kind of breathing organ, expanding and retracting and coming back together as a sort of focus on that. And that would be, you know, after I've done this a few times, kind of like the next step. So maybe you felt like a subtle difference in the way that you're holding yourself, and that's because we're working with the whole of the pressure system in our body, which has very much a relationship to our posture and our kind of patterns in the body. But for sure, we would have nudged that diaphragm in some way or another in this one. Quite often, also something to observe with these practices is that maybe afterwards you really need to go and pee. So if that's the case, then that definitely works. No, we're working with the fluid body here and playing with that, releasing and increasing that pressure all the time. So it would be quite natural to need to pee after this practice. Thank you so much for having a go and for watching. There is one more class to come in this little introduction course. Thank you so much, and thank you, Martina. Thank you.